Hello everyone, and welcome to this module on climate change and its implications for land, land use and land tenure. In this model, we'll begin by understanding the existential challenge of climate change. We will then focus on the profound implications of climate change for land in general. We will then narrow our focus to the implications of climate change for land use and land tenure. We will end the module with a brief discussion of the ways in which we can mitigate and adapt to climate change and the promise that land resources hold to reduce the severity of climate change. Let's get started. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in 1760, the level of carbon emissions in the world has increased steeply due to the widespread consumption of three main fossil fuels: coal, petroleum, and natural gas. These fossil fuels are non-renewable fuels formed over millions of years due to the decomposition of the buried remains of plants and animals under certain conditions of temperature and pressure. Due to their origins, fossil fuels contain high carbon content, and when they are burned to produce energy for modern industrial society, they release carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas whose concentration in the air has increased steeply from 278 parts per million at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in 1770 to 426 parts per million in early 2025. A certain level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere plays an important role known as the greenhouse effect, naturally trapping a certain fraction of the heat from the sun and preventing it from escaping into space. This results in the earth being warmer and more conducive to life. Carbon dioxide is not the only greenhouse gas, and it performs this heat trapping function along with other gases such as methane, nitrous oxide, ozone, and water vapor. What is new since the Industrial Revolution is the unnatural increase in the emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases due to the enormous combustion of carbon-heavy fossil fuels, which has aggravated the greenhouse effect. Thus, a greater fraction of the sun's heat is now trapped by these greenhouse gases, resulting in overall rise in average global temperatures, a phenomenon called as global warming. The Earth as of 2023 was 1.1 degrees Celsius warmer than 1880. In addition to the rise in sea levels due to the melting of polar ice caps due to such increased temperatures, overall global warming is also resulting in unpredictable changes in the Earth's climate system. Such unpredictable changes include more severe heat waves, harsh winters, increase in extreme weather events such as cyclones, and elevated risk of forest fires, etc. Such abrupt, unpredictable, and ultimately dangerous changes in the Earth's climate system is known as climate change. Thus, global warming and climate change are related but not identical phenomena. Global warming is the overall rise in planet-wide temperature, while climate change is the unpredictable behavior of the climate system because of such overall rise in temperature. Thus, global warming can be said to cause global weirding climate change. The Earth has massive amounts of water in its north and south poles in the frozen regions of Arctic and Antarctica, enough to raise the sea level by around 65 meters. Global warming threatens to cause the melting of a substantial portion of Arctic and Antarctic ice, resulting in a rise in overall sea levels. Already, substantial sea level rise has occurred with levels rising by 17 centimeters between 1901 and 2010, which comes to 1.7 millimeter per year, and with the faster rise in sea level of 3.2 millimeter between 1993 and 2010. About 50% of the world's population lives along the coast, and this massive population accounts for 70% of world's production. Sea level rise thus threatens coastal lands and populations around the world, especially in low-lying, densely populated countries such as Bangladesh and other densely populated ones such as Nigeria and Indonesia. The problem is not restricted to the submergence of coastal lands causing massive losses to coastal agriculture, fisheries, and residences. There is also the problem of saltwater intrusion caused by the rising sea levels into freshwater table under coastal lands, which can severely compromise coastal drinking water, adversely affecting the lives of millions. Another adverse effect of climate change and the resulting submergence of coastal land is on housing properties along the coast, with insurance premiums for such properties being significantly higher and buyers being increasingly reluctant to buy such risky properties. The unpredictable changes in temperature and precipitation caused by climate change are likely to have significant and mostly adverse impacts for agriculture. Agriculture depends heavily on reliable crop planting, growing, and harvesting seasons. Think about crops such as rice and sugarcane that need plenty of sunlight and water to be harvest ready. When the timing and regularity of seasons change, with summers becoming hotter, rains becoming irregular, and winters becoming colder, it has an adverse impact on both the motivation and economic prospects of farmers. There is real risk that climate change's worse impacts could result in more farmers giving up agriculture and migrating to cities, thus causing massive acreage of fertile lands to be lost. Such lands could even turn into uncultivable barren land if there are irregular rains or no rains at all due to climate change. The resulting value of such barren, abandoned land would be much lower than fertile land, which affects the economic prospects of farmers wanting to sell their lands. Climate change is also likely to affect the agricultural policies of countries, since any long term planning for growing certain crops in particular regions of the country are likely to be compromised by the unpredictable effects of climate change. Coastal cities such as New York, Mumbai, Istanbul, Sydney, etc., attract huge numbers of people looking for work opportunities and a better quality of life. As the world urbanizes, a greater fraction of its population is likely to live in coastal cities. The rising sea levels caused by climate change threaten the coast facing and coast adjacent portions of such cities. This poses multiple problems in terms of loss of highly valuable coastal land, threat to a higher number of human lives, and strain on government budgets for lower lying cities, as expensive solutions such as land reclamation and sea dikes have to be built. Urban planning and land use planning in coastal cities is likely to become more challenging as sea level rise combines with other extreme weather events such as heavy rainfall and heat waves to make certain parts of the city more disaster prone. Such elevated risk to urban regions also has massive implications for property prices, insurance premiums, and the ability of cities to attract and retain highly talented and highly skilled people. Mega projects such as highways, high speed rail, ports, and airports are crucial for development as they facilitate quick, low cost movement of massive numbers of people. Countries such as India are in the middle of a massive infrastructural boom. Think of giant projects such as the Atal Setu. However, such mega projects depend crucially on predictable conditions of heat, cold, and rainfall over several decades of the lifetime of such projects. Large scale exercises such as land acquisition for these projects are often based on assumptions about such climatic conditions and their resulting impact on the quality of the land, such as its moisture levels and quality of soil. The perturbations in weather and climate patterns caused by climate change will adversely affect the planning of such mega projects and will threaten the long term viability of executed projects. For example, think about the impact of sea level rise on the world's ports that have been constructed on certain assumptions of the sea level. The resulting impact on world trade could be massive. Currently, 23% of India's land is under forests, with many national parks and sanctuaries supporting a spectacular diversity of flora and fauna. India's forests also support many millions of Adivasis, tribal people who have coexisted with and sustainably harvested forest products for millennia. Climate change threatens to have an adverse impact on the forests and tribal land due to erratic rainfall and unpredictable heat and cold waves. This will affect the biodiversity of such forests and could cause the migration of animals and a shift in plant ecosystems. Such an adverse shift is likely to affect the tribal communities living in and around such forests who depend on them for bamboo, honey, firewood, meat, tubers, medicinal plants, etc. It could also affect the land use planning and conservation strategies of forest departments across the country, as the average climatic conditions on which such plans are based are now shifting. There could be a negative impact on forest department revenues from various forest products no longer being available to climate change related impacts, such as more frequent and intense wildfires. India is already one of the water stressed countries of the world, with enormous pressure on its freshwater resources due to its huge population. The extreme heat waves due to climate change are likely to have adverse impacts on freshwater availability in many parts of the world. In countries with a high number of seasonable monsoon fed rivers, erratic rainfall or no rainfall can result in severe water scarcity and increased pressure on groundwater tables. When rainfall does occur, it is likely to be heavy and concentrated, resulting in the opposite problem of too much water, which leads to surface water runoff on increasingly concretized surfaces rather than groundwater percolation. Such a lack of percolation is likely to cause temporary flooding and public safety related hazards, as happens in major cities such as Mumbai and Bangalore every rainy season. But water scarcity and shortages also occur during summers. Land tenure can be understood as the formal and informal rules surrounding land in a particular area. Climate change is likely to have major impacts on these formal and informal institutions around the world. Agricultural productivity may reduce due to climatic perturbations, affecting crop productivity and farmer incomes. Property values may decrease as once fertile land becomes increasingly unproductive. Tribal lands, where customary rules often apply, may be adversely affected by climate change, with the state unable to rehabilitate such tribes due to absence of formal ownership documents. To summarize, this module looked at the complex, multi-level and multi-sectoral impacts of climate change on land use. We looked at the implications of climate change for agriculture, forests, tribal lands, coastal lands, mega projects, cities, and water availability. We also briefly looked at its implications for land tenure, including formal and informal institutions. Climate change's adverse impacts on land can be minimized through a combination of measures. Mitigation. Transitioning from the fossil fuel economy to a renewable energy economy, thereby reducing carbon emissions, is perhaps the most important step that needs to be taken in order to reduce and stabilize carbon emissions within the limits specified by the Paris Climate Change Agreement and the Glasgow Agreement. Adaptation. In addition to mitigating the worst effects of climate change, the world also needs to adapt to those effects which it cannot mitigate or prevent. This means construction of sea dikes, resilient housing, growing more climate resilient crops, factoring in climate change in urban and regional plans, etc. Taking advantage of opportunities. Land resources hold enormous potential to reduce the severity of climate change through innovative trading mechanisms such as the Clean Development Mechanism, innovative technologies such as carbon sequestration, and carbon trading systems for sectors such as agriculture. The carbon credits generated through such mechanisms could provide farmers with a good source of revenue and help offset the adverse impacts of climate change. We will learn about these mechanisms in greater detail in our next module. Thank you.